Well, hello there, you spectacular specimens of humankind, and welcome back to the wonderful world of thirst and vanity. On the 22nd of May, it was World Goth Day, and as I am aware of the fact that many of you delightful individuals have come through from my reaction to the Crow trailer, the new 2024 remake, I figured I would do like a proper deep dive into one of the iconic moments of 1990s goth culture, The Crow. And we're not talking just the movies, we're talking the entire comic book franchise. You see, a little while ago, we did a movie night with me and some delightful individuals where we watched The Crow, the old 1994 version with Brandon Lee, the one that I grew up with and was an exquisite part of sculpting me as a human being. And then afterwards, we sat and had a conversation around the universe, around the new Crow, around all of the old movies and the TV series, about what it was about them that could have been better, and also specifically what they could do in movies that brings in more of the universe. So naturally, that led me to bring on some description of Deep Dive, where I was enthused by the realms of The Crow. You see, the movie was such a massive part of my gothic exploration in the 90s, but I never really explored the joys of the comic book universe. And many people who commented on that original video pointed out the fact that I am not a die-hard fan because I haven't read all the comics and the books and stuff. However, they also pointed out some interesting things in regards to who they think the new Crow should have been. One of the big comments was, it shouldn't have been Eric Draven. Eric Draven's story has been told multiple times over. They should have picked one of the other Crows and run with that if they were planning on doing a remake. And it's fascinating to see what is available in the universe that they could have taken and run with. And it would have been a cool, very different, but a cool movie nonetheless. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and look deep into the universe of The Crow, the dark, gothic universe, and see where it takes us. Maybe even I'll be able to teach you something new. Okay, in regards to the franchise as a whole, I'm sure many of you are aware of the original movie with Brandon Lee, The Crow, and of course the new version, which is starring Bill Skarsgård, and in between those, there were 3 other movies and a TV series. So there was the original Crow movie in 1994, then in 1996, they released Crow, City of Angels. After that, in 1998, they released the TV series of Crow, Stairway to Heaven. The TV series finished in 1999, and then in the following year, the year 2000, they released the third movie, The Crow Salvation. Then finally, in 2005, they released The Crow, Wicked Prayer. And of course, most recently, they have announced the 2024 version of the remake, the remaster, the reimagining of The Crow. So there's 4 movies to date, and of course a movie on the horizon, and a TV series that is what we know so far in regards to cinematic universe of The Crow. And then of course, there's the literary universe of The Crow. So in regards to the comic universe, there were 19 series of comics. So not like individual comics, there were 19 series of comics that came out. On top of that, there were also 8 novels that came out and a set of short stories that came out. So that is like the literary universe. 19 series of comics, 8 novels, and a book of short stories. So it's a massive, massive universe that goes beyond the realms that we're already aware of given what the movies have shown us, you know? Now, before we dig into the nitty-gritty of some of those little details regarding the literary and the cinematic universe, I wanted to look at some of the lore, the delightful, tasty, tantalizing lore behind The Crow. The characters that take on The Crow. What is The Crow and what is the story behind it? So the idea of The Crow being a vessel that carries the spirit from the land of the living to the land of the dead is supposedly based on a Native American belief. Now, I have to say, I did a bit of a deep dive into what I could find on the indigenous beliefs around The Crow, about what they felt regarding The Crow carrying the spirit from the land of the living to the land of the dead. And I didn't find that much. I found a few other stories regarding The Crow, and I'm going to tell you about them because they are absolutely fascinating and beautiful. but I didn't find that much. I found a couple of literary references to it, but none of the original beliefs. So I'm not sure whether it's one of those oral traditions that has been passed down from generation to generation and then came into the world of the Crow universe, or whether it's a fabrication that has been said to have been a native belief, but isn't that case. There were a couple of articles from folklorists that referenced it, but I didn't find anything particularly concrete regarding that story, regarding the origins of the story, whether it was just a belief, whether there was a mythos behind it. So if you are a First Nations people of America and you know the story, I would love to hear it. Please put something in the comments or put references in the comments that I could go check out, because I would love to find out what this mythos is based on. What are the origins of this idea of the crow carrying the spirits? Obviously, in multiple religions and cultures across the world, the crow has been associated with death, especially the death on battlefields, because it is a scavenger. It will eat whatever is available, and battlefields have that association, you know? But yeah, I would love to know if there's an official story, if there is an official tradition or belief that is associated with this, or whether this is a fabrication that has just been said to be true because it's become so well known. Kind of like the fact that people understand zombies to be these hordes of flesh-eating creatures, and yet that was only made a thing in the 1960s with the film The Day of the Dead. There is a quotation here in regards to the native beliefs and the crow in relation, direct relation to the comic and cinematic universes. And I'm going to read that for you now so we're all on the same page. To certain Native American tribes, the crow is the carrier of souls between life and death. They believe that, upon death, the crow will carry the soul from the land of the living to the land of the dead, the afterlife. But sometimes, something so terrible happens to a soul that the sadness and anger left by the departed spirit is carried over into death with it, and the crow cannot take them to rest. When this happens, the crow will bring that soul back for a time to put the wrong things right, redeem the soul of its burden, and enact justice on those who enacted evil unto them in life. So that's how it relates directly to this universe. However, in regards to what the native people of America believe, I have found that they see crows as symbols of good luck and wisdom, although they can be seen also as quite tricksome. They're very intelligent creatures. And there is a fascinating story about the rainbow crow, which blew my little mind, but I love it. I love it so much. So the idea is that the crow was originally a multicolored creature. It had rainbow feathers and an extraordinary song. The story goes on saying that there was a terrible winter and the people and the animals of the land were freezing to death because the winter was so unbelievably cold. So the crow, with its beautiful wings and its glorious song, flew up to the sun and brought down some of the fire from the sun to warm the people and the animals of the land. However, the smoke from the fire stained its feathers black, and as it inhaled it, its throat became sore. And that is the reason why the crow has its black feathers and its hoarse caw, whilst also being a symbol of good luck, wisdom, and being seen as extremely intelligent. And I love that. I just love it. It's great. Now, within all of the media that is available for the crow universe, there are actually different types of crow, like the guardians, the actual birds, as opposed to the characters that personify the crow. And each of them have different powers, different pros and different cons, different strengths and different weaknesses. And it was really hard to find a decisive list of what the different crows were, regarding like what their merits and flaws were, that kind of thing. I do know that Eric Draven's crow, the original crow from the original comic book and the original movie, was the spirit crow. And that seems to be the most common iteration of the avian guardian that seems to accompany these characters. And the powers that the spirit crow provides is near invulnerability, enhanced strength, agility, speed, and reflexes, really becoming a superhuman almost, really acute senses, senses, advanced regeneration, enhanced combat capabilities, and then some more of the mystical senses. As opposed to just being a superhuman, they also have the ability for the tactile empathy and telepathy, being able to draw memories from items and people. And also, as we see in the movie, give those memories back, transfer them from one's own consciousness to another person. And one that isn't really explored in any of the movies, to my knowledge, is the fact that they also have the ability to turn into a crow, being able to fly as a crow, having the night vision, being able to see through their crow familiar's eyes. And that kind of would explain why they're so easily able to just vanish out of nowhere if they just disappear off in the form of a crow fluttering away. Now, the main weakness in regards to the spirit crow, as we know it, is the fact that if the crow guardian is injured or killed, it means that the character themselves loses the powers. They lose the invulnerability, they lose the rapid regeneration, they lose the immortality. However, that is not the only weakness when you expand out to the other variations of the crow. The crow guardians have different powers, different rules and regulations, for lack of a better term. In the crow Flesh and Blood, Iris Shaw, who is one of the other iterations of the crow, doesn't have the regenerative capabilities. And according to her crow guide, she must exact her revengeance before she rots to nothingness. So she doesn't heal, she can't rapidly regenerate. In fact, in accordance with the literature, she actually is really bad at healing and therefore staples her wounds shut. In the Crow Wild Justice, Michael Corby has a limited supply of what they call Gorgon blood, which is a finite resource that gives him his power, and he has to exact his revenge before he runs out of Gorgon blood. Then in the Crow Waking Nightmares, there's actually an added flaw that if the character ever chooses to leave the path of vengeance, then the Crow takes back its powers. So if somebody goes, do you know what? Vengeance isn't for me, I'm not going to continue doing this, the Crow goes, all right, cool, no worries, and just takes all the powers back. Nope, you can't have your rapid regeneration, no immortality for you. Yeah, there you go, enjoy that rigor mortis. Then in the Crow Curare, the character is actually a ghost. The Crow guide brings back the spirit, but not the body. And the ghost has to help a detective find and kill her murderers. And then finally, there was a series of comics called The French Crow, and one of them was called Medieval Crow. And in that, the Crow guide actually abandons the lead character, Leandra, after he accidentally kills his own son. And he's left to wander the earth until he finds the true reason for his restless wanderings. I'm not going to lie to you, there is an awful lot that I found out in this deep dive that desperately makes me want to go and find all the comics and read them all and learn all of the intricate natures of them all. However, with that being said, there are also some interesting stories that come up. But we'll get to that. All in all, there are 27 different characters that take on the persona of the Crow. Starting from the original Eric Draven, which was the original comic hero in 1989, the first iteration of any version of the Crow persona, right the way up to Null Narcos, who was originally known as Vincent Tesma, who is the most recent iteration of the Crow persona in the most recent comics, the Crow Leth. Now, in the cinematic universe, there's actually a large variety of the characters. Many people will know Eric Draven, and many people may think that the Eric Draven is the only version of the Crow that is in the cinematic universe, but actually, the movies cover a lot of different characters. The original 1994 movie, starring Brandon Lee, was naturally Eric Draven's story. It was the original comic, and therefore the original movie. However, there are naturally certain differences. In the comic, he's a mechanic, whereas in the movie, all we know of him is he's some description of rock star. In the movie, the reason why what happens to them happens is because they complain. They have a tenancy complaint, and the people who own the building aren't happy with that. Whereas in the original comic, it's far more brutal. They literally have a breakdown at the side of the road. Their car breaks down, and a gang finds them. Literally the pinnacle of evil for evil's sake. The next movie was the 1996 The Crow City of Angels, which actually covers a character called Ash Corvin. Now, there is a crossover between this movie and the original movie in the regards that the little girl in the original movie, Sarah, is a tattooist. She's grown up. She is a tattooist. And the reason why their makeup is the same is because Sarah gives them the makeup of the Crow. We'll start talking about the makeup in a bit because that's an entire thing in and of itself. One of the things that really annoyed me was the fact that they didn't get the makeup right. And the makeup for me was about Eric Draven, because not all of the Crows have makeup. But we'll get onto that. Then, of course, there was the 1998 TV series, which was around the character Eric Draven again. After that was the year 2000, The Crow Salvation, which focused around a character called Alex Corvus, who had a very different story and didn't wear makeup despite the fact that it looked like he did. But again, we'll get onto that. And then finally, in 2005, there was The Crow Wicked Prayers, which was a movie that I didn't even realize existed because by 2005, I was kind of done with the Crow sequels. I was like, do you know what? They're not getting good. They've not really been good. I'd never really had much time for them. I watched them because I wanted to know. I wanted to see where the story took it, but I didn't enjoy them by any stretch of the imagination. But The Crow Wicked Prayer follows a character called Jimmy Cuervo. Actually, in the comics that movie is based on, his name is Dan Cody, but for some reason they changed it to Jimmy Cuervo in the movie itself. Not entirely sure why, but I'm sure there was a reason. And then, of course, we have to acknowledge the fact that they're making a brand new movie, and that's meant to be about Eric Draven as well, which is problematic, as I've said before, because Eric Draven has a very specific, well-loved story. There is creative license, but it feels like they've been too creative with that license to a lot of us that are the fans. In fact, from what we've seen of the trailer, a lot of people have been saying that it shouldn't have been Eric Draven. Instead, they should have looked into other stories of the characters. For example, part of the story that is Wicked Prayers focuses around Jimmy Cuervo's partner who has psychic capabilities. And we saw some description of psychic capabilities from Shelley in the new movie. So they're taking elements of that already. They're taking elements from one of the other characters from the Crow universe and giving them to Shelley. Bill Skarsgård's version of the Crow has very bleedy makeup, very contrary to what is most traditionally associated with Eric Draven. And many people have said instead they shouldn't have gone with Eric Draven, they should have gone with someone like Michael Corby, who is the Crow that has the Gorgon's blood. Part of Michael Corby's whole thing is the fact that he is tattooed by the Gorgon god, and the marks across his face, his shoulders, his back are all markings from the Gorgon god, from the Gorgon's blood, which is a really cool idea in the universe and something that could easily have been explored in this new movie. But enough of that, let's get on to the makeup, because the makeup was a big thing that I had an issue with because Eric Draven's makeup is so iconic, and after my own outrage, I was really intrigued to see what the rest of the universe held in regards to the makeup of the Crow. Was it the same all the way around? What was it all about, you know? Now, in the original 1994 movie, we see that Eric Draven's makeup is inspired by a masquerade mask that is hung on Shelley's vanity table, her makeup area. However, in the original comics, it's never really explained why Eric adopts that makeup style when embracing the persona of the Crow. And then there's the TV series, which focuses on Eric as well, where when he is the Crow persona, the makeup magically appears on his face, and when he isn't, the makeup disappears from his face. I know that there's people out there that absolutely loved it because they grew up with the TV series, but it's the 90s. I can give it a little bit of leeway, but come on, really? Oh, it appears. It's like Clark Kent and his glasses. It's like, oh, it appears when he is the Dark Avenger. But other than that, no, it's all right. It's okay. It's not a problem. In the second movie, City of Angels, the makeup is actually given to him from Sarah. So Sarah, who is the little girl from the first movie, actually meets up with Ash Corvin and is like, hey, this is the makeup. This is the makeup style you use. This is what you do. This is the thing, you know? This is what Eric Draven did. You've also been brought back from the dead, so it only makes sense that you have the same makeup styling, you know? In the third movie, it's a little different. It's a little different. I mentioned before that Alex Corvus doesn't actually wear makeup. Still has the same style of facial adornment, shall we say. However, that character gets executed in an electric chair. And of course, scars got from an electric chair definitely make lines across the eye and darken your eyes and make your lips a delightfully darker shade as well. I struggled with that one. I get it if you've got scars from being executed in an electric chair. Fair enough, that's not a problem. But then creative license, I suppose, you know? Maybe it was the influence of The Crow that created the scars to be like The Crow branded visuals, you know? And then in Wicked Prayer, they don't really explain it. Jimmy Cuervo just does that makeup. That's it. That's not really anything. It's just a thing. It's just what they do. It was the branding for the previous movie, so it only makes sense that it's the branding for this one, you know? And it's interesting that the new movie is stepping away from the traditional Crow aesthetic in regards to the movies, and I get that. I do understand that idea. But then from my personal perspective, they just shouldn't have made him Eric Draven. They should have gone for a completely different story. There are literally 26 others to choose from, so it's not like they were scraping the bottom of the barrel, you know? In the comics themselves, it does vary quite a bit. I did mention the fact that Michael Corby had the Gorgon tattoos that cover the face, the neck, the shoulders, and are said to cover the rest of his body as well. But there are a variety of them that don't have any markings, any makeup. Joshua Zane, Iris Shaw, and Mark Leung don't wear makeup at all. They are brought back from the dead, and they don't wear makeup. There's no need for them to, so why would they? And the rest are said to be drawn towards like the black lips, the darkened eyes, that is reflective of Eric Draven's original makeup, but it's never really focused upon all that much. Having looked into some of these characters, some of the different ways that the Crow manifests itself to help spirits enact their vengeance is really fascinating. And I genuinely have got so much more love for the universe now that I've deep dived into it, and I really want to get hold of all of the comics and the novels and sit down and give them a proper read and look into where it all came from. What was the evolutional process of the comics, of the stories, of the different characters, and where they come from and where they go. I originally started the journey of this deep dive to try and understand more about the universe so that I could try and understand some of the choices that they have made for the new movie. If we're being honest about this, I was desperately trying. However, having deep dived into it all, it actually just makes me more frustrated. It makes me more frustrated at the new movie, the new trailer for the movie, at least so far, because there is such a rich universe that could go really far with some other iteration of the Crow, that there was no reason to make it Eric and Shelley. There was no reason to try and rehash out their story. Their story has been done to death with the movies and the TV series. It's just been done and done and done, whereas they could easily have just picked one of the other characters and run with that. And there is an absolute wealth of tasty lore and variations on what the original Crow was that they could have really pulled from. And it would have been an amazing thing for the fans because they would have loved to have seen something that hasn't been done before. And they wouldn't have had the backlash from fans like myself where it's like, actually, this was our upbringing. This is what we loved, and you didn't have to make it Eric and Shelley's story. You could have picked any of the others. And I'm not saying that it's all good by any stretch of the imagination. From what I've seen, there was some interesting tidbits. Some of the other fun stuff that I found, there was the comic series The Crow Hellbound, where the character Billy actually teams up with a demon and the pair of them work together to escape their relative hells using the crow's power. There's a universe crossover with the Crow universe, this dark gothic universe where the undead come back and enact their revenge, and the X-Files. The aliens, the unusual monsters, the mutants, and all that jazz. Fascinated, but skeptical when it comes to that kind of crossover, it has to be said. And there was a comic called Hark the Herald that was published in 2019, where a young lady, a girl, and her dad are kidnapped after a argument in a bar. They're taken to a Christmas gathering, and the Christmas gathering decide to kill them because they don't want them, I don't know, grassing them up to the police, saying, hey, these people kidnapped me. And the little girl is brought back a year later. And I quote, "A year later, she was resurrected by the Crow in order to check everyone who's been naughty or nice." There's a level of cringe in there that my body can't entirely deal with, you know? So yeah, that was our little deep dive into The Crow, or the universe of The Crow, and how it has so much potential that has yet to be tapped into. In honor of, you know, World Goth Day, and the fact that this was such a massive influence on my gothic upbringing, you know? Friends, if you've enjoyed our little deep dive, I would love it if you could click that cheeky little thumbs up. And if you would like to see me deep dive into other wonderful universes that have yet to be thoroughly explored, then please put them down in the comments, because I loved this. I absolutely loved deep diving into all of this stuff and seeing what was available and exploring a universe that I had an interest in but had never really tapped into, you know? If you haven't already, I would love it if you could click that cheeky little subscribe button. We do all kinds of delightful hedonistic things, and I'm getting more and more into talking about different movies and bits and pieces. There's some stuff coming up that I haven't finished yet that I'm quite excited to show you in regards to a crossover between movies and my other things that I do, like sex education, you know? Don't worry, friends. I'm not only available on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/ValenVain, where we talk about all of the things, whatever you would like to talk about. We tend to deep dive into it. The only thing we don't talk about is politics, because I can't be bothered with the drama that causes. You can find me on TikTok, where I talk about all description of whimsical facts about schmecks and a variety of other small, short-form hedonistic endeavors. And, of course, you can find me on Instagram, where, of course, you get more of my delightful features, my delightful face, and some of the behind-the-scenes things that I get up to with the events that I run. Speaking of events, next week is my Ken event. For those people that don't know, I run a rather large erotic cabaret called Ken. Stands for Kinky Erotic Nature, but I basically called it Ken because I really wanted to call a nightclub night a person's name. But that's an entire story in and of itself. Next week is when it's all happening, so I will do my best to get out a video for next week, but I will see what I am able to do. We have got an entire venue to decorate and get all the performers sorted, get all the hotels sorted, and all the bits and pieces. It's an entire thing. And it takes us about 2 days to set up and about a day to clear down, and it's beautiful and amazing and glorious, but good lord is it a lot of work. So yeah, until next time, you beautiful individuals, don't do anything I wouldn't do, because if I wouldn't do it, I'll fucking kill you.